And welcome to Saturday mornings on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Zara Janjua, sitting in for Shereen today. And my guests this morning are broadcaster Afia Hagan. Good morning, Afia. Hello. And Herald columnist Alison Rowett.
Good morning.
And editor of The Big Issue, Paul McNamee.
How you doing?
Hello, good morning to you all. Now, this week we're talking about the changes to income tax for higher earners in Scotland. How do you feel about it? We've a trio of festive TV treats to review, including a heavy dose of 80s nostalgia with Simple Minds, and Michelle McManus charts the rise and fall of some of Scotland's best known talent show winners. We'll also be talking Tartan Tat, XL Bullies, and we'll discuss why audiences are getting more and more keen to jump up for a standing ovation. Let's have a listen to some of this week's big moments.
Investment and protection from Tory cuts, this government does believe that those with the broadest shoulders should pay a higher rate of tax. And to be clear, by the broadest shoulders I mean the top earning taxpayers. We will therefore add a new income tax band to the Scottish system.
10.26 million. We have the results. Okay, you two.
My name is Michelle McManus, and 20 years ago, I won a TV talent show called Pop Idol.
Michelle!
Did you give a standing ovation?
Absolutely, yeah.
Why did you give one?
It was just a great show, and I think it just shows appreciation for what they did. It's brilliant.
No, you're swept along with it, aren't you?
Because they were amazing.
Any breed of dog can become dangerous if you don't do the necessary work and training with them, socialisation. It's not a breed-specific issue.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart. Who took the Merry Christmas? People all over the world forgot about Mary.
What we did at the football was to try and make people happy. The best way to make them happy was to get results.
Darkness is coming. The Saxons will take the Isle. Come home, Arthur.
I feel it in my fingers.
Mama in the kitchen cooking, and the children upstairs asleep. It's time for old Santa Claus to make his midnight creep call. Santa Claus wants some loving.
All of that and more to come here on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Zara Janjua. And do get in touch with your thoughts on anything we're talking about this morning. Just text me on 80295. That's charged at your standard message rate, or use the hashtag Shereen on social media. Now, described as a music-inspired human interest story imbued with social history, politics and activism. A new film charting the meteoric rise of the band Simple Minds landed on the streaming service Paramount Plus this week. Called Simple Minds, Everything is Possible and directed by Joss Crowley. It focuses on the ongoing friendship between Jim Kerr and his songwriting partner Charlie Burchill, who met in the shadow of a brand new Glasgow Council tower block in 1967, and the dreams that propelled them to stardom. Let's get a flavour.
The post-war party, if you like, of full employment, you could see that party was coming to an end.
It was scary, but at the same time it was kind of exciting, you know.
I can't think of a better or more sort of productive place to start a band, really.
The best band in the entire history of the universe, Simple Minds!
That is defiant music.
Success is the minimum of what you'll accept.
I really think that Simple Minds changed the face of music.
We're pop stars, man. He was loving it a wee bit too much.
If you don't have hits, you're out the door.
I was completely mesmerised. It was so powerful.
Didn't just open the door, it was like a bomb going off.
Things started to fragment a little bit.
They were one of the biggest bands in the world at that point.
It's quite a bold step to potentially sabotage your career. We had to consider things going down. And if things go down, well, how far down?
Now I'm with Afia Hagan, Alison Rowett and Paul McNamee, and we have all had a watch of the documentary, haven't we? So Afia, can you tell us about the film? Do you think it did a good job of telling the story of the band?
Oh, I think it did an excellent job of telling the story of the band. Now, I came to watching this documentary. Simple Minds was probably a little bit before my time, my formative years of what I was deciding I liked. Obviously, I knew of them, wasn't a huge fan. And for me, to have various band members, it centered around kind of the relationship between the two main members of the band. They had a change of lineup and everything. But for me, what was really interesting is all the people they got to talk about them. So you had Charlene Spiteri there, you had Bob Geldof, you had Mariella Fostrop, who I never knew was a tape recorder for the band when they were making one of their albums, and she was credited as Mariella sometimes. And it was a brilliantly told story of where they came from, what dreams they had, sort of the economic and social circumstances that they came from, and the things that were happening in Glasgow at the time that meant they decided to make music, and they had punk roots, which I never knew about as well. And it's very interesting that you had Bob Geldof in there talking about, great bands came out of great cities that were going through troubling times, whether it was New York, whether it was Dublin, whether it was Glasgow.
Yes.
And it was a great way of telling their story up until where they are now, where they have a female vocalist and they have a female drummer and all the different iterations that the lineup has taken. For me, as someone who's coming to it, not knowing that much about Simple Minds, obviously knowing the huge hits, knowing they had a hit in Breakfast Club, I learned so much.
Okay.
For me, it was a wee bit too long.
Okay.
But if you are a huge Simple Minds fan, you'll absolutely love this.
Plenty of famous fans featured in the documentary, and Afia's saying that it was slightly before her time. I need to be careful how I pose this next question now to Paul. But can you take us back to that 80s era then? What do you remember of Simple Minds?
Look, I came into the Simple Minds and I started becoming aware of them just when they were becoming the big stadium bombastic band. So it was post Don't You Forget About Me and post Live Aid, and it was just in that moment. So that is why for me it's always been slightly jaundiced, my thoughts of Simple Minds, that they are just another big band without much to them. I knew afterwards that as time's gone on that there was some history to them, but what I didn't realise was just how rich that history was and how experimental they were, how different they were, how they were trying to be so different coming out of Glasgow. And you got Bobby Gillespie telling that story a lot. You got Muriel Gray telling that story a lot. There was a lot of the social history of Glasgow at the time, which I'm always a sucker for when that is in any kind of documentary. And so there was a lot of Glasgow being built, Glasgow being rebuilt. It was the south side, as you mentioned, it's in the shadow of Tory Glen. They came out the Gorbals into Tory Glen. So you got all the social history that I found fascinating. And then this brilliant arc of the story is Jim Kerr, who has got a very good sense of history and where he sits in history, of a band with the climb and the climb, then the decline, and then what happens next, then when they come back again. As he said, that the story's been told before, and that's what gives it some real purchase. And I was telling my daughter about this, talking about different generations, because of the Breakfast Club, that it was the real propellant moment, as Jim Kerr said, it was like an explosion going off. But now for Generation Z, it's because of Pitch Perfect, because they reference the Breakfast Club in Pitch Perfect. There's another generation discovering Simple Minds purely because of that second film. So they've had these two big Hollywood moments through their career that have helped take them to two different generations.
I mean, the history of the band is fascinating. It's something that's definitely explored in the documentary. Right from those first frames, we see the old city of Glasgow, and we're taken into the moment of when they were born, when they first became friends. But Alison, how significant was it to have that band, that Scottish band, really at that time propelled to those heights?
It was, because it was, even though, there's a long history of, say, like working class kids in Glasgow and Scotland, making it big in the music industry. It was significant that they said that their sort of guiding light at first was David Bowie, which, rather than any other Scots band. So I think that they were really right at the forefront of this new flowering of Scots talent, which has gone on since, right up to, Paolo Nutini, etc. And they argued that there was something specific about being from Glasgow that sent them beyond, the boundaries of what they might have been able to expect in life. And that seemed to be, in Jim Kerr's case, this confidence, this super confidence that he had that they were going to be different, they were going to do something.
Yeah. And Alison, were you a fan of Simple Minds growing up?
Yes, I was. I mean, you couldn't not be, because they were, the band that was, going places, and when they were on top of the pops, there was a moment of pride. I liked this film. I thought it did justice to them.
And I mean, I'm interested to know, Jim Kerr is obviously a very central character in the band, and lead really in pushing the band to the success that it had. But did any of you ever meet Jim Kerr? Have any of you ever met him?
No. I've met Charlie Burchill. Well, sort of. It's not a very good story, but you can have it anyway.
Go on then.
It was the old John Smith bookshop, which some listeners will remember. You won't have heard. It was way before your time. And anyway, so I was in there book shopping, and I knocked this book off the display, and Charlie Burchill picked it up and gave it to me. So I said, thanks very much. And he said, you're welcome. That was it.
And that became the theme for their 19th album.
So I'm sorry, it wasn't exactly Peter Ustinov.
If only that were the case.
But there it is.
If only that were the case. And obviously the relationship between Charlie and Jim was explained within this. Afia, you said you hadn't been a fan, and this was very much an introduction for you to the story of the band. What did you make of their relationship?
They were kind of like brothers, but brothers actually liked each other and actually got on. And I thought it was significant and a bit of a shame that both of them sort of said that other members of the band, because the lineup's changed quite a few times, didn't want to be in the documentary. But it's also clear that those two were the heart and soul, and still are the heart and soul of Simple Minds. And I didn't realise they had 21 studio albums. I mean,
it's extraordinary, isn't it?
That's pretty incredible.
Busy.
There's not many, busy. And a world tour next year. I mean, perseverance, right? Basically that's the name of the game, and that's what they have. But I thought their relationship was really nice, and clearly it's instrumental in more ways than one, and excuse the pun, of keeping the band together.
Paul.
And they've kind of followed each other around the world. Wherever they've lived next door to each other, more or less. And I remember a few years ago feeling very jealous of Jim Kerr, because I read that he had bought a hotel in Sicily. He had this place in Sicily, and they filmed quite a lot of the latter part of the documentary there. And Jim Kerr still lives there in Tamarina, and so does Charlie now. And there was an interesting section, because Jim Kerr is a big football fan, massive Celtic fan, and he started to sponsor the local football team
club.
But because they wore blue, he thought, we can't have that, and he changed it to green and white hoops, and he changed the name to Tamarina Celtic. And I thought, good man.
Well, he's putting his mark on it, that's for sure. There were lots of lovely stories within the documentary, wasn't there? I mean, the story of how they met in particular was an interesting one, wasn't it, Alison?
Yeah, it was when they were kids, and the old Glasgow was being bulldozed, and the new high-rises were going up, and they met apparently in Builder's Sand, the Glaswegian sandpit, as kids, as 4-year-olds or so, and that they've been together 60 years now.
It's just amazing, really, to see the longevity of that relationship and how the band lasted purely based on their bond, I think, as brothers and friends. Any highlights then? What about for you, Paul?
Well, I mean, the sense that you got of Jim Kerr for me was fascinating, because we're going to be talking about Michelle McManus later, and both come from similar backgrounds. Both come from working class Glaswegian Catholic backgrounds of Irish stock, both going into the music industry. But Jim Kerr felt almost of a different breed. There's something about him. He had a curious magnetism and also something of the outsider about him. And you could tell, even now when he's a kind of older, a little more avuncular fella, that there's just something that sets him apart. And perhaps that's what it is that is drawn everyone to Simple Minds and has made Simple Minds the act they are. And I didn't really have a sense of that until this particular show.
Just finally, Alison.
Highlight has to be Jim Kerr talking Italian.
Perfect, wasn't it?
Yeah, very.
Oh, well, there's plenty to see in that documentary, and that is, of course, on Paramount Plus. But let's move on, shall we?
Join us for Christmas Day.
It's lovely to be with you on this very special morning.
It's beginning to
with Kathy and Tony from 8.
We'll reflect on what this time of year means to children in Scotland and around the world.
Merry, Merry Christmas.
Followed by Brian with your festive requests.
We are live on Christmas morning, and that is always such a thrill.
Jamie introduces the perfect post-dinner pick-me-up after 4.
Welcome to the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra at the movies.
And Roddy gets the party started from 6.
Texas are here to play. This is Christmas at the Keep.
The sound of Christmas Day on BBC Radio Scotland.
Now, with me and my guests, Fia Hagan, Alison Rowett and Paul McNamee, we have lots and lots coming up today. Of course, we've just been chatting about Simple Minds today, and you can catch up on any of that on BBC Sounds, but still to come on BBC Radio Scotland. How are you feeling about the rise in income tax for top earners? And who does most of the chores in your house? But first, I'm obviously still here with my guests, Fia Hagan, Alison Rowett and Paul McNamee. And of course, it's time to get your moments of the week. Let's go to you first, Afia.
Well, on Monday night, I was invited to the Royal Albert Hall by Brenda Amanis. Now, she used to be the arts correspondent at BBC. She's one of my friends. And so she had a box, of course she did, at the Royal Albert Hall. So she invited me and a few friends to watch Trevor Nelson's Christmas Soul concert. Now, I've never been. So I've been going since 2019. I've heard great things about it. So I was like, yes, definitely. So me and hubby went, and can I just say, it is the most incredible night of live music I've seen this year. And I saw Beyonce's Renaissance tour.
Oh, come on.
That is how good it was.
Well, high praise indeed.
It was just incredible. So it's the BBC Concert Orchestra with a live band as well. And then Trevor Nelson sort of curates all these singers to come and sing their hits and Christmas songs. So you had Shola Ama, you had Natasha Bedingfield, My Girl Can Sing, you had Lamar, you had the Kingdom Choir. It was absolutely it was amazing.
I never thought I would hear anyone say that Trevor Nelson was better than Beyonce, but there we go.
There you go. That's a direct quote. You can have that.
Fia, thank you.
And I think actually it was on his show, The Rhythm Nation, on Thursday night, so you could probably catch it again on BBC Sounds.
Oh, lovely. Well, there we go. High
Highly
praise
recommend.
indeed from Afia. And from one kind of big stage concert perhaps to the small stage, Paul, your moment of the week.
Yeah, that set me up for a fall there. It's not quite the Royal Albert Hall, and it wasn't quite Trevor Nelson's Soul Review of the Year. It was a Christmas concert at a school, the local school, and I wasn't going to go. You know, you go to some of these things sometimes with heavy feet, thinking, should I, can I, will I? But my daughter is back for the holidays, and for some reason my son said, yeah, all right, I'll go as well. So we all went, and I loved it. It was the Christmas concert at the school, so there was a range of ability and talent. It went from people who were every bit as good as professional musicians to those who are not quite there yet.
Being very diplomatic.
A lot younger. Well, I think all of them. If you're brave enough to get up and do that at any age, I take my hat off to you. And I really loved it.
Well, that's great, but they're always slightly chaotic, aren't they? These shows.
Yeah, they are chaotic, and that's I suppose that's part of the charm. But you got to throw yourself into it, be in the moment of it. Otherwise, what is the point? And also because of the age of my kids now, this is the last one they'll go to. My son will be leaving secondary school. And I thought that there's a bit of a poignant moment here, but it was the highlight of my week.
Well, is it even Christmas if you don't see an amateur performance of something, a nativity or what have you? Fantastic. Thank you very much, Paul. And Alison.
Mine is a festive tale as well. It's a store, an Aldi store in Brecon Powys in Wales, and it has this in the middle aisle, a robin that's been appearing seemingly out of nowhere, and all the customers have taken it to their hearts, and the snapped photos of it sitting on the trolleys and sitting in cakes and all that. And then somebody complained about it, and word got round that they were going to get rid of the robin. So there was a huge petition, a fuss, and now it's in the national press about saving this robin. So the RSPB have been involved as well, and it's all ended happily. The robin can come and go as it likes. However, how do they know it's the same robin?
Oh, you think it could be? They could be doing it in shifts.
I did wonder.
Well, it is Christmas. I suppose there's a lot of demands on Robin's time, so that it might not be just the same one that's coming in and out. That's a fair point, Alison.
It is. I mean, having lived in Aberdeen for some time, I think seagulls were always a bit of an issue in shops and stores up there.
I can't see a seagull getting the same
politer.
reaction.
You're not going to get the seagull petition. Keep it in the middle. Shows where the cards are.
Well, lovely to hear your moments of the week. Now, before we move on, let's wind back to the glittering ceremony of BBC Sports Personality of the Year and a Lifetime Achievement Award for this man.
All we did at the football was to try and make people happy. And the best way to make them happy was to get results. Fortunately, we managed to do that a few times, and if they enjoyed us winning, it's no a fraction of what enjoyment we got for the support that they gave us. The football clubs that have supported me, starting off at Celtic, Liverpool, then on to Blackburn, ended up back at Liverpool. So I'll always be eternally grateful for the people that stood by us and people that gave us a job.
That was Sir Kenny Dalglish receiving his Lifetime Achievement Award. Paul, what a moment it was for Sir Kenny Dalglish there. I mean, you watched the programme, I presume. How significant do you think this was for him, and what did you make of that moment?
He downplays it so much. One of the greatest footballers that Britain has ever produced, not just of his generation, but ever. And he's saying thanks to them for giving me a job. It's just... Kenny Dalglish has always seemed, he's portrayed sometimes as this kind of dour character, but as ever in these times when people talk about him and say, well, no, he's not. He's very dry, he's very funny, but it just doesn't always come across. But I suppose it's a long overdue award for him, given the successes he had as a player and as a manager. And then I think post Hillsborough, that moment at Hillsborough when so many lives were lost, and it is something that's supposed to have broken him. And I can't remember if he went to all of the funerals of the deceased at Hillsborough, but he went to a significant number. And I think that changed him radically. And it just was a measure of a man that he would do that he would give so much of himself to try and support the families that have been through so much. So I think that is testament to him as much as this award for his football and playing career.
Alison, what are your thoughts?
It was very moving. I mean, I was somebody who grew up with, King Kenny, flag on the wall, and my nephew's named after him, and hi, Kenneth. That sort of thing. So it was very moving to see him get the recognition he deserves. He's somebody who's never sought it. But as Paul said, he is a footballing genius and just a good man, as he showed after the Hillsborough disaster.
It was a very emotional moment, wasn't it, when it was announced, seeing him coming out, the music. I mean, the production in itself, I think, is geared up to aid with that as well. But now, Afia, you are no stranger to an awards ceremony. Did you see the programme and what did you think?
I saw some clips of it, and yeah, like you said, I mean, it's always very beautifully staged. There's high production values. What I loved about Kenny Dalglish getting this Lifetime Achievement Award is I really believe in giving people their flowers while they're still here. I think we're very good at doing that when people are not here anymore,
Yes.
which sounds a bit morbid, but it's absolutely true. Excuse me. And I love the opportunity to be able to celebrate someone who's had such an incredible career like Kenny Dalglish has. And of course, it was brilliant to see Mary Epps win the Sports Personality of the Year award. And I think what's been even better is the backlash of people who just can't cope with a woman footballer, a woman goalkeeper winning an award for football over a man. I mean, just the commentary about her dress, about what she was wearing, about what she's posted on socials about it, about the fact she's won in the first place.
A very sort of divisive topic, really, which was, and that was, as you're mentioning, the 2023 award, becoming the 70th Sports Personality of the Year, of course, was Manchester United and England goalkeeper Mary Earps.
I'd like to say how humbled I am to be on a list of such incredible athletes. I've really enjoyed hearing your stories tonight. I think sport is a fantastic thing where it brings the world together, and to hear you guys talk and hear about your journeys, I just think it's unbelievable. So congratulations to you all. Also, thanks for voting for me, everybody that voted for me. I should probably have started with that one. Thank you very much. I'm very honoured and humbled. For me, I feel like this is, you know, the ultimate all-round sporting accolade, and I think us as Lionesses and obviously United as well, we've had an incredible couple of years, but this is just, yeah, wow.
That was England goalkeeper Mary Earps. And obviously, let's pick up with you again, Afia, because we wanted to let the listeners obviously hear from Mary Earps there. That was her picking up the award. You've mentioned a number of controversies that have since kind of transpired, and one of them was the award itself. What's the issue?
The issue is, it's really simple. She's a woman, and she won Sports Personality of the Year, not Female Sports Personality of the Year. And she won it for a sport that many would say, or a lot of men would say, that women's football isn't up to the par of men's football. That women's football, you know, why was there such a fuss about excuse me, Women's World Cup and all that? And it's just, oh, pardon me.
Oh, I know you've got a wee cold at the moment, Afia. Do you want to take a drink of water and we'll come back to you? Paul, you had you had an eye on this story as well, and you know, if it wasn't going to be Mary Earps who won this, who could it have been?
Well, I had hoped that Katrina Johnson-Thompson would win it, and I think she has had a remarkable career, a career of ups and downs. She's the current world champion at heptathlon, and she's been previous world champion at heptathlon. She's won indoor for pentathlon as well, and I think that she's had difficulties, she's had injuries, but sometimes, and she got close this year, but maybe not close enough. I don't know how the vote split went. I'm guessing Mary Earps won by quite some distance. A lot to do with people being angry at Nike's decision not to make her shirt after the World Cup, and a lot in support for her as a footballer. But I think sometimes athletics can be the poor cousin of sport, particularly women's athletics. And I was trying to think, was Sally Gunnell perhaps the last female athlete who won Sports Personality of the Year? I can't even remember if she won it, but that's a name that comes to mind, which that is almost a generation ago. So, you know, while I have no problem with Mary Earps winning it, I would have liked to have seen Katrina Johnson-Thompson take it.
And do you think any of the backlash that has been received is purely just because she is a woman? Is it reductive?
I'd imagine a lot of it is, yeah. And, you know, people need to get over themselves with that stuff. It doesn't... sometimes you can't argue the point. If somebody isn't making a rational point, it's hard to make a rational point in opposition to it.
It was a lovely moment to see, and I think especially for a lot of sports fans, a lot of young female footballers will have seen her up there. And as you had mentioned, so Alison, that the moment with Mary Earps and the controversy around her shirt and Nike not providing a strip, that must have inevitably helped, I think, to raise the awareness of the game and itself. Do you think that was an important factor in making this decision about her lifting the gong this year?
It was, and I think Afia's right. You know, you could tell a lot about it from the backlash, you know, why she had been, you know, so sort of monstered by some people, not everyone. I mean, she did win a public vote in Sports Personality of the Year. But there's a nice piece in The Guardian this morning. It says it all in the headline. Why can't men abide? Victorious sportswoman Mary Earps, and it's by Marina Hyde. And it just seems to be that it's the usual suspects, your Piers Morgans, etc., your Joey Bartons, you know, who are not keen on women's football anyway. And somehow this has been another sort of exercise in what they would call wokery. But, you know, they couldn't just allow that she was a talented athlete. She was very popular with the public. She'd done a lot this year and she deserved it.
Well, that, of course, was Mary Earps, and Sports Personality of the Year, which has been going for 70 years. Extraordinary, really. So let's move on from that now.
This is
With me, Zara Janjua, and my guests, Afua Hagan, Alison Rowett and Paul McNamee. Now, to Tuesday's announcement from the Scottish Government that higher earners in Scotland are to pay more income tax. A new 45% band will be introduced for people earning between £75,000 and £125,000. The top rate of tax paid by those earning more than £125,000 will also rise from 47% to 48%. Finance Secretary Shona Robison confirmed the move as she unveiled the government's budget for next year, which included funding increases for the health service and councils, but cuts to enterprise funding, housing, higher education and rural affairs.
When public services need investment and protection from Tory cuts, this government does believe that those with the broadest shoulders should pay a higher rate of tax. And to be clear, by the broadest shoulders, I mean the top earning taxpayers. We will therefore add a new income tax band to the Scottish system, the advanced rate, which will be set at 45 pence and will apply on incomes between £75,000 and £125,140.
The tax changes mean Scotland will have 6 income tax bands, while the rest of the UK has 3, with middle and higher earners in Scotland paying more than other parts of the country. Scottish Tory finance spokeswoman Liz Smith questioned whether the Scottish Government was sending out the right message that Scotland is open for business. Scottish Labour finance spokesman Michael Mara claimed it was a chaotic budget from what he called an incompetent government that will leave ordinary Scots paying much more and getting much less in return. Well, Afia, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Did you get a glass of water?
I'm back.
Good, fantastic.
I did.
What did you make of this move? Not at all. What did you make of the move?
I think chaotic certainly seems to sum up the 6 tax bands at play here, from your start at 19% to your top at 48%. I definitely think that people who earn more should pay more tax. I think that just makes basic sense. But when you look at £75,000 a year, if you're earning that, and 45% tax, that means that actually you really don't earn. I mean, you say £75,000 a year, it sounds like a lot of money, but actually it's not, you know, after you've paid 45% tax. And I just think that there's a lot of people in the middle, the squeeze middle, I think it was Theresa May called them, who are going to be squeezed even more. And I think, you know, definitely your higher end, and I'm talking, you know, your 6 figures and above, they should certainly pay more tax. But there's people in the middle who are going to end up paying much more tax, are going to be so much less well off than they were before. And yeah, we need to have more money in the system to be able to pay for all the things that Scotland needs, you know, education, transport, health infrastructure, all those kind of things. But it means that you're going to have people in the middle who are just going to basically have less money, less spending power. That could affect inflation and everything else. I think we need a simplified tax system, but we need to really look at who is paying what, because like I said, £75,000 sounds like a lot, but 45% of that gone, you're not really left with much.
Well, you know, once the budget is announced, it's every year when the budget is announced, we do have winners and we have losers. And I think it would be useful to have a look at potentially some of those. Alison, can you talk us through who's come out well potentially from this and who not so much?
Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, the Scottish Government would say that they had, in a difficult time, protected public services, which affects everybody, you know, no matter whether it's your bin getting emptied or social care for an elderly relative. The losers would be, as Afia said, that people who are earning a certain amount, who may not have considered themselves well off, but who will now feel the pinch. Other winners, I suppose other winners were, in a sense, the Scottish Parliament itself, because usually budgets in the past have been not that consequential, you know, not that divisive, not that much spoken about. But this was, so I think that was something that led from it.
And Afia mentioned that's the squeeze middle there. Now, obviously, this has been done to tackle the £1.5 billion deficit. Just how much of a dent is this going to make in that?
Well, according to the people who crunch numbers, it's sort of it's a rise that's not quite big enough to make a difference, but enough to cause a row. And I think that's what it will do from now until the general election, because this is going to be a plank of the Conservatives. You know, they're going to be pushing that Scotland is, you know, more tax than anywhere else in the country. You know, it's more complicated, etc., not welcoming business in, etc.
Paul, those with the broadest shoulders should pay more. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Of course, it's a fair comment. I think we have to be equitable with who is contributing here, and over 75 grand. You know, that's a good whack of money, and it's not as if it'll be 45% on all of it's 45% on anything over the 75. So it does feel as though it's a bit of a change. It's not going to be a dramatic change for a great number of people, but it will boost the public coffers. I think there are a few problems with it. One is the number of tax bands. It looks like only accountants are really going to profit here, or particularly when they go to payroll and people are trying to work out what they're paying. That will become an issue, I think, the complexity of it, and it doesn't look like it's going to be eased. I can understand that the Scottish Government don't have many levers to pull, so if they do want to plug a gap left by shortfall in block funding from Westminster, this is one of the only things they can do. Perhaps they could have handled it better. I do think that there is a problem with the freezing of the council tax. That to me is a much bigger issue here, because I can't see any good reason for this. I interviewed Humza Yousaf a couple of weeks ago, just ahead of the budget, when we knew that this council tax freeze was coming in. That's for the big issue Christmas edition, which is still on sale, incidentally. And I asked him about the freezing of the council tax, because I don't think it's fair. And he said that they will meet the shortcoming that the councils have. But ultimately, you can't, because what it'll mean is councils will cut back on the work that they can do, which will affect local people. It will stop local people getting work and getting employed in their local area. So that's not going to be very useful. And ultimately, it will just have to go up hugely at some point in the future to make up for the shortfall that is now. So that, to me, is kind of incoherent maths that they've come up with. And that is a much more damaging, potentially much more damaging issue than the bump in tax.
Paul, thank you very much. Let's leave it there.
What's getting you talking? This is Shereen on BBC Radio Scotland.
Still to come here on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Zara Janjua. A furore in France over short haircuts for women, but why? Plus, we'll find out if STV's new epic drama set in the Middle Ages is just the thing to cosy up to on a winter's night. But now, it's been a few years since a study found that women do twice as many festive-related chores as men. But maybe things have changed a bit since 2016. Well, not according to journalist Chloe Hamilton, who wrote in The Guardian this week that she's sick of what she calls decking the halls alone. She adds that for the rest of the year, her and her partner proudly shun the idea that there are boy jobs and girl jobs and share everything equally. So she asks, why, when it comes to Christmas, do I find myself doing all the work? Now, as I've been reading this out, Paul has been looking increasingly irate and desperate to jump in and defend men everywhere. So, Paul, take the floor.
Well, look, in terms of these things come around all the time to say that men aren't pulling their weight, and I also think, hold on a wee minute here. You know, that's not necessarily the case. Perhaps putting out some decorations or hanging decorations on the tree, men don't maybe get as involved, but it's hanging decorations on a tree. Let's not think of this as desperately difficult or unpleasant work. But when it comes to other things like preparing for the meal, getting the shopping in for that, actually cooking the meal, I would like to think that there are an awful lot of blokes who are now much more involved in that than this particular top line story suggests.
Well, you sound like a modern gentleman that I'm sure women everywhere would be delighted to hear from. But you say, I mean, it's not particularly taxing and it's not difficult. Yes, you're right. But the problem is, just because it's not taxing and not difficult doesn't mean it doesn't take up a certain amount of time. Isn't that right, Alison?
Yes, it does, yeah. I mean, every year there's always a point at which I almost break, and I'm usually standing in a supermarket, bathed in sweat, and saying, I am never, ever, ever doing this again.
No. It takes the joy out of it. I do have, there was a few years ago when I decided to make lots of gifts for people. And I was crying in the kitchen at 3 a.m. into a mix of tablets.
What were you making?
A tablet, Scottish tablet.
Right.
I decided to make, and I was crying into that in the wee hours, thinking, why
did that add to the taste?
To myself. Salted caramel one, yeah. Thea, what are your thoughts? Do you think women tend to do more than men at this time of year, and why?
Of course they do. Now, I like to think, or I used to think it was because I'm like, Mrs. Christmas. I love Christmas. And I'm definitely all about, like, I'm the instigator of the Christmas tree and all that. But it gets to a point, and it usually is around today, the 23rd of December, where you're like, come on, guys, you're going to need to, you're going to need to actually help me do some stuff. And my husband, God love him, he literally expects Christmas just to happen as if Santa does absolutely everything, like the cooking and the cleaning and the laying of the table and the buying of the presents, the wrapping of the presents, just everything. And so it's partly my fault because I will take on all the stuff, but it's also partly his fault because he just doesn't seem to realise that there's things to do. Like, we've got to go and pick up the turkey and stuff after the show, so later on today, and I'm like, so you're going to come with me? And he's like, why? I was like, what do you mean, why? I'm not going to carry everything home by myself.
Do you think we just, women perhaps in general, we could be better at delegating? Because having observed a very traditional household in my life, I think that sometimes it's, I feel like it's that Vince Vaughn. What was that film with Vince Vaughn and, with the lemons? I want you to want to buy the lemons, that one. There's a little bit of that goes on at this time of year where it's like men don't want to necessarily get involved and we don't want to necessarily tell them. And, why would they want to take on extra work? Why would anyone want to take on extra work? And ultimately, I guess, women would say it's to create this lovely day, isn't it? It was The Breakup. Was that it? The Breakup.
Yes, it was that film. I know that my problem is I'm not very good at delegating. And there's just that thing of, do you know what, let me just do it myself. And I just do that the whole time.
So it's easier. I mean, Sheryl Sandberg has documented this for a long time. And I think even during the pandemic, she was talking about women doing the double shift. So, working from home, and the majority of households, unless you were living with Paul, of course, the majority of
I can imagine that there might be some opposition to that thought at the minute.
Women were having to do quite a lot more, weren't they? And I guess, why would it be any different at this time of year. Alison, is it time for a change? And it sounds like it could be at your house. And what would that look like?
Well, no, I mean, I must say in fairness that there are whole things that I don't do. I don't do any decoration. I hardly do the present buying or the wrapping or things like that. So I only really do the supermarket shop, but I do moan a lot about it.
What are you complaining about? Let's go out and get some carrots.
I know, but cooking the meal itself, that's quite a chore. But yeah, no, definitely there should be, it should be shared out among us.
Oh, well, it would be great to know what you think, who does the lion's share in your house, and do you actually want to celebrate with your significant other, for being, proper Mr. or Mrs. Christmas, maybe they are the festive Grinch. Let us know. You can text us on 80295.
This winter, Life Tracks is...
Are you looking for a fun, interactive, action-packed way to raise money for your school fundraiser, special event, or nonprofit? Tag team with Memphis Wrestling. Call now at 901-729-6353.
Well, there is plenty coming up today on BBC Radio Scotland. At 11:30, we have Breaking the News. Join Des Clark for a sack full of hilarious, previously unheard material from this year's Breaking the News. At 12 o'clock, we have Off the Ball with Stuart Cosgrove and Tam Cowan with their guests, which are Mark Jennings, the comedian, and journalist Paul English. At 2 o'clock, Sports Sound. Kenny McIntyre has all the action from across Scottish football with open all mics on FM and BBC Sounds. Or for live commentary of Celtic versus Livingston, ask your smart speaker to play BBC Radio Scotland Extra. At 7 o'clock tonight, Take the Floor. Gary Innes has a fantastic session from Michael Phillips' Scottish Band to share with you. And then at 10 o'clock tonight, Billy Sloan's here. Billy will be looking for your favourite guilty pleasure as he delves into the BBC archives for some classic live performances from Big Country.
What's getting you talking? This is Shereen on BBC Radio Scotland.
Still to come here on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Zara Janjua. When was the last time you felt moved to give a standing ovation and our audience is getting too quick to give them? Plus, we review Michelle McManus's look back at 20 years of Scottish talent show winners. But now, long winter nights, and for some, those strange days between Christmas and New Year are looming, where you might be looking for a good old box set just to cosy up with. Well, perhaps a new STV Player drama will be right up your street. The Winter King is described as a bold and revisionist historical drama and is based on Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles series. It follows Arthur Pendragon as he becomes a legendary warrior. Let's get a little flavour of that now.
Darkness is coming. The Saxons will take the Isle. Come home, Arthur. Only you can save Britain. I'm my own man. No family, no country.
The gods, they have a plan for you.
Bring the country together.
It's your destiny.
Vengeance is the way of things.
Maybe the way of things has to change.
We must unite the tribes.
It's time for something new. For something new. For something new.
Your plan better work, brother, or we're all lost.
It's easy to divide a country. The hard task is putting it back together.
Alison, it sounds very exciting. Is this a box set that you'll be watching over Christmas?
No.
Okay.
It's a box set that I'd like to hurl somewhere as far as I could. No, I didn't like it.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, kind of the trouble sort of reared its head in the first 5 minutes. It had lots of blokes standing around. It had lots of blokes with long hair and encrusted blood on their faces.
Okay.
So it kind of just went downhill from there.
Well, short and sweet. And Paul?
I really wanted to like it. It looked, apart from the blokes standing around in empty, drafty rooms with long hair and blood on their faces, when the scenes outside, it looked really like there was a lot of money put into this. That this was a rich production that was trying to take you into that period of the 5th or 6th century, whichever it was. And it had Eddie Marsan being this absolutely bonkers King Uther Pendragon, Arthur's father, and he seemed to be enjoying himself. And there was plenty of Scottish talent in it. Stuart Campbell from Bells Hill, Ian de Cassiger from Glasgow, and you're thinking, let's hope that this works. It was just so boring.
Okay.
It was so boring. It was so boring that I was thinking.
Were you not a fan of Game of Thrones?
No, I wasn't. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not into historical drama unless it's real and it's looking back at a period in time, and you can either learn something or you know something of it. Therefore, you're into that moment. I don't like the kind of the fantasy historical drama and this. Arthur wasn't real, as we know, but it was presenting it as if it was fact.
Yes.
With bits of magic floating about, and I am waiting for some flying dragons. I don't know if they're going to come in. No, actually, that's not true. I'm not waiting for anything. I'm not going to watch it again.
Yeah.
Well, it really does sound like perhaps that didn't go down particularly well. So I think let's just move on from that one, shall we?
Discussing the stories
festive chores. Ewan in Edinburgh has been in touch and he says, I'm in the third supermarket of the day. Oh, poor you, Ewan. Surrounded by families and couples doing the shop. I passed the butchers where a queue of nearly all men were waiting in the pouring rain. I'll be doing all the cooking while others set the table and decorate the house this year. We shared present buying. Well done. There will always be people who don't want to help out, but let's not make sweeping statements. Happy Christmas. Happy Christmas indeed. You've got Paul smiling there, Ewan, so thank you very much. What do you think? Text us on 80295. Now, theatres, critics and industry experts say there has been a significant increase in standing ovations at shows, and the feel-good jukebox musical The Choir of Men have been seeing standing ovations almost every single night.
Did you give a standing ovation?
Absolutely, yeah.
Why did you give one?
It was just a great show, and I think it just shows appreciation for what they did. It's brilliant.
Did you take part in the standing ovation?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. And did you just go along with it?
Peer pressure. No,
No, you're swept along with it, aren't you?
Because they were amazing, fabulous voices, such entertainment, and it's so different.
The Stage Management Association warned there is a risk of devaluing standing ovations if they become expected rather than spontaneous. And etiquette advisor Liz Wise said, like all exuberant behaviour, it takes you off the scale. So if you are generally overwhelmed, you have nowhere left to go. Fia, your thoughts on this?
I mean, this is just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how many standing ovations I gave at the Royal Albert Hall on Monday. I think if you think that a performance is worth a standing ovation, just do it. I mean, I don't really enjoy this kind of, people deciding how we should express our enjoyment or express our gratitude for what we're seeing on stage or on screen. It's just a bit silly to me. If you think that a performance or a song deserves a standing ovation, then jump out of your seat and do it. I mean, obviously don't cartwheel down the aisle and try and join them on stage, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with giving standing ovations. I don't think it devalues what it is. I think it just shows your appreciation for a great performance.
But now in recent times, we've seen a little bit more policing going on inside theatres. So what do you think, Alison? Is it all this pent up energy that we have from having to control ourselves throughout the entire show.
Maybe, because it wasn't that long ago that people were complaining about, the audiences being drunk and, having phone calls in the middle of performances, etc. And now they're being sort of lambasted for more exuberant behaviour. No, I think I agree. But although I can see that if you were doing it constantly, and as people have been doing it in the middle of shows, or, regularly as it goes along, I can see that becoming a bit annoying.
Mm-hmm. Paul, briefly, your thoughts?
I let people do what they're going to do. Let them react as they react. I've always found the conventions in theatre, and particularly in live classical music, ridiculous. You got to wait until the absolute end before you applaud, rather than between movements. Let people go with what is happening. Let them be emotional. And they're paying enough money to go into theatres. Let them react as they feel positively.
Just a quick question. Did you, Paul, then have a standing ovation at your son's performance, at the school performance?
Well, he wasn't performing. It was other people that were performing. Did I stand? I may have. Yes, in fact, I did for some stuff.
So there was a bit of a standing ovation for that one then. And I'm sure
it was more involvement. We were standing and sitting during... no, I won't go into it.
Well, listen, Afia, thank you very much. Alison and Paul, we're back after 11 with more on the big talking points of the week. Hello again, you're listening to Saturday Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Zara Janjua, in for Shereen today. Along with my guests, broadcaster Afia Hagan, Herald columnist Alison Rowett and editor of The Big Issue, Paul McNamee. Lovely to have you all with us. Now, and the four of us here will be mulling over more of the big talking points of this week, including reports of XL bully dogs being rehomed in Scotland, to a festive row over Love Actually, and Wham finally getting Christmas #1. Plus, would you welcome a move to have less tartan tat on sale in our tourist hotspots? Well, do get in touch with your thoughts or on anything that we're talking about this morning. You can text me on 80295. That's charged at your standard message rate, or use the hashtag Shereen on social media. Exactly 20 years since Michelle McManus won the series Pop Idol and topped the charts with her single All This Time. I still remember it well. Last night on BBC Scotland Channel, a chance to revisit those heady years and to catch up with Scottish talent show winners to find out how life has been since they were thrust into the limelight. Let's get a little flavour of Michelle McManus talent show winners.
10.26 million. We have the results. Okay, you two.
My name is Michelle McManus, and 20 years ago, I won a TV talent show called Pop Idol.
Michelle!
This is my dream, and you've made it come true, and thank you so much to everybody.
How could I have possibly imagined what was to come next? I had no idea.
My winner single soared to #1 in the charts. And I received incredible support from the public.
It was an amazing experience. It changed the course of my life.
I'm going on a nostalgic journey into the world of TV talent shows.
More people voted for Pop Idol than voted at the general election.
Hello, darling.
You look amazing.
So do you. Other than being Robbie Williams, the entity that is a pop star, I'm also a massive fan of TV.
Pop Idol sparked the revival of TV talent shows like The X Factor, Britain's Got Talent and The Voice. I'm meeting the Scots who took the world of TV talent shows by storm.
Nobody really knew what was going to happen. But when it did explode, whew.
To reflect on where we are now after all this time.
I mean, you just can't help but sing along, can you, to some of those songs? What a memorable era, and very memorable voice as well from Michelle, who is obviously one of the presenters here on BBC Radio Scotland. It's lovely to hear her voice coming through. But Afia, what did you make of the way that Michelle told her story?
I mean, she is just so relatable, so down to earth, isn't she? You know, a story of where she came from in Glasgow, just this girl that grew up watching her grandma sing and thought she was incredible and wanted to do it too. And, you know, and talking about how she had this rare Saturday night off, watched Pop Idol, decided to audition. You know, it's like your classic sort of rags to riches story, if you were. You know, and talking about what I thought was really interesting, talking about her family, how they were down in London to support her every week. You know, not knowing how they afforded that, must have cost them hundreds of pounds, things that you don't really think of when you think about someone being in a talent show. You think of them singing every week and what they're going to wear and all that, but not actually what the families have to go through to make sure that there's always somebody there to support her.
There was a real sense of struggle, wasn't there, coming from her family and that support network that she had.
Yeah, definitely. You know, just a normal working class family. But they did, you know, incredibly well to support her, and she won. And then, you know, it's kind of what happens afterwards. You have a hit single, then you don't have another one, then you get dropped so quickly. And actually, when you look through the years, when you read about people who've been on Pop Idol, X Factor, all the stories are very, very similar. That is what happens. That, you know, the record labels are very fickle and all the rest of it, which is really disappointing. But I think with Michelle McManus, when she talked about the narrative that people would talk about, the way she looked, her weight, how they would describe her and write about her in the newspapers. You know, she picks up one bit in the newspapers where a writer's written something particularly cruel about her weight, saying she's no pop idol, basically saying there's no way she can be a pop idol because, you know, she's overweight. And she says, oh my goodness, you can never write that about a lassie now. And I'm like, it would be even worse now, Michelle. What they would write about you, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. On social media, can you imagine the things that would be written about her? I think the papers actually now would probably be even worse. So I'm glad, really glad that Michelle McManus is not on, you know, Pop Idol in 2023. I think it would be even worse for her.
Do you think, Paul, we're still seeing a sort of similar story coming through from contestants then of reality TV shows? Because Afia's spoken there about about Michelle's rise to fame, and then about that sort of crash that comes after the success, after that initial burst of fame, into kind of the darker side really of being famous. But do you think it's still the same narrative for a lot of contestants?
I don't think that there's still the same range of programmes. There's, I guess there's Britain's Got Talent and The Voice. I couldn't tell you who has won them in recent years, so I don't know if it has had that similar flash of a moment and then down they go again. I do think the thing that has changed is we've moved on from cruelty. They used to be really, really cruel, and even some of the little clips of Simon Cowell, not Callow, that's a different Simon. Simon Cowell, when he was judging Michelle, first of all, thought that is a nasty thing to say to her, just in his attitude and his presentation. That wouldn't happen now. I guess he moved on from it. But we used to celebrate that. We used to think, isn't that great? Isn't that funny? That's a way to deal with people.
And there was a moment with Pete Waterman, wasn't there?
Yeah, so he stormed out when he realised that she'd won. And she's talked about, she thought that was because, or maybe that was her being nice, saying that he felt that she didn't know what was coming, that it was going to be terrible for her, all the pressure, because judgments about her appearance, about her weight, would make it really intolerable for her. It could have just been that he thought he couldn't sell her as a pop star. That's why he stormed out in a huff. So, but these things I do think that part has changed. If you think about The Voice now, which is on, it's, I guess, the Saturday night show, it is about the voice rather than about the appearance. The people who are in it tend to be more encouraging rather than discouraging in anything anybody is doing. But I guess so long as the public still want to have some element of judging talent, there will be some kind of those shows.
Alison, what do you make of Michelle's story in itself? Because, you know, I thought what came out really well and what she put across was really her own life and her own take on what had happened. I think she articulated really well that the ups and downs and the highs and the lows, and, you know, was very candid, actually, very honest in her perception of it all.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you know, particularly when she started, you know, going into the years when it all sort of went, went south, and she wasn't getting work, etc. But it was, you know, just the classic showbiz story of, you know, picking yourself up, dusting yourself down and starting all over again. And so I liked the bit where it showed you her afterlife, as it were, her appearances at the Edinburgh Fringe. She did a 5-year show there. And then, as you said, our career to date as now as a presenter of BBC Radio Scotland.
Amongst other things, I think it was heartwarming to see that opportunities eventually did come through, and that seemed to be the case for many other of the contestants as well. Afia, who else was featured in this? Did you get a sort of sense of nostalgia from it? Afia, can you hear us? Are you still with us? Let's come to Paul. Did you get a real sense of nostalgia then when you were watching?
Well, I had forgotten quite a few of the people in it, except Susan Boyle, who I suppose is the global star that's come out of a British talent show, and it was sustained for a time. And while it's maybe on the wane for her, you were reminded of the ridiculous stellar success she had. #1 albums in Britain and America, 2 of them in the same year. Only the Beatles, and I think they'd said the Monkees, which I didn't know, had done that. So you're reminded that there was at least one person who came out of it who really went on to the global success. Some of the others, you know, their level of success is perhaps where they're comfortable at now, but I didn't really... Maybe that was the nature of it. It was so transitory. You know, you were there in the moment. It was entertainment rather than music. You were there to entertain people, and then you were cast aside. But at least some of them have found some way of carrying on, making a living out of it.
And Afia, was it a sort of celebration of Scottish music talent, or was there an element of sort of surprise, an overtone of surprise for the success that many of them had in music?
Yeah, there kind of was. And, you know, I don't know why, because there is a really successful crop of people, of talented people that have come out of Glasgow. I mean, earlier on we were talking about Simple Minds, and, you know, you've got people like Paolo Nutini and I've just forgotten, but, you know, Lewis Capaldi, like loads of people that have come out of Scotland, and it was great to see. You know, I actually didn't realise that you had so many talent show contestants that were from Scotland. I mean, some of them, you know, from 2015, 2012, I had no idea whatsoever. You know, I kind of tuned out from the X Factor and things like that by then. You know, the Kelvins, all these kind of people. And so it was great to see where they are now, where they're going, of course, like Paul said, featuring Susan Boyle, who we forget is just like an actual international global star. So yeah, it was great to see all of them in there, great to see their journeys. I would have liked to see David Snedden, though. I thought it was really interesting that he kind of popped up as a producer that was working with someone else. I'm glad that they referenced Darius in there as well. But yeah, I would have liked to have heard from David Snedden, I think.
Is there anyone else you would have liked to see on the programme, Alison?
No, I think they covered it fairly well. I mean, there may be some deserved longer time than others, and there was a sense of, you know, we were sort of going through as many as the production team could get hold of, come hell or high water. So maybe a wee bit less than others.
Should have got Bobby Gillespie onto it. Got him to comment on that as well as the Simple Minds documentary.
There's certainly a bit of a musical themed show here, really, wasn't it? But when you think back to that sort of very specific period in cultural history, you know, it was very poignant. I think that whole era was defined by these talent shows, and what I guess would be the equivalent of that today.
Well, there are still a couple of talent shows. Like, I think The Voice is the big one, but
reality shows.
And reality shows have moved on as well. You know, they are a very different sort than they were in the mid-noughties.
Because it seems these days it's lots of dating programs we're seeing. Are those becoming the big things? Love Island stars hitting it big. Afia, do you think we'll ever see the likes of this kind of talent show ever again?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I kind of think that maybe now there is an appetite maybe for like an X Factor reboot type thing. We have got The Voice and we have got Britain's Got Talent. I think there kind of is a space for that. But I think, loads of people now are on things like TikTok and all social media. That's kind of how people go viral. But, there might be a little X Factor reboot in the cards. I think that would be good.
Well, that was Michelle McManus, talent show winners on BBC One Scotland tonight at 6:30, and it's available now on the BBC iPlayer.
Season's greetings to you. Season's greetings to you. I'll be your Santa baby till 1984. When the new year rolls around, you still be asking for more. Who took the merry out of Christmas? People all over the world forgot about Mary. Christmas comes but once a year.
That is just some of the hit singles that have fought it out to be Christmas #1 this year. And in the end, it came down to a choice of two, closely competing for the top spot. Would it be Wham or would it be Sam? That's Sam Ryder, whose new Christmas single, Your Christmas to Me, was just pipped to the top spot yesterday by George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley. Yes, after 39 years. Can you believe it? Last Christmas finally gets the #1 spot. Cher also became the oldest woman ever to score a UK top 40 hit at the age of 77 with her new Christmas banger, DJ Play a Christmas Song. Now, Alison, finally, for Wham, was this a deserving winner this year for Last Christmas?
Yes, of course it was. They'd been rioting in the streets if it hadn't won. No, it's just this, I've never heard that song start and been bored by it. Every time, it's delightful, which is, the mark of a real classic. And the video that accompanies it is just so much cheese as well. So it's just perfect George Michael. Just showing what a genius he was.
Well, just as we were doing the montage of all those Christmas songs coming into this item, my legs were tapping, my feet were tapping, legs were going. Christmas songs are just a bit joyful. But what is the significance of Wham being #1 this year, Paul?
Well, I suppose it shows the durability of the track and that it is now an established part of the canon, and it's a classic that will people cannot get enough of. They keep going back to it. They keep buying it. This was one of the few years in recent times when there was a battle for Christmas #1 when it wasn't Lad Baby, when people seemed to actually care and get involved in the battle and say, well, I want this or I want that, in the ways that I don't remember them doing for 20 years maybe, And so because of that, and people's attachment to Wham, and there's a sentimental attachment to George Michael, and he died on Christmas Day, and all these things came together. So I think that possibly is the thing that got it over the line. And it is now, I've just read this morning, the UK's third biggest song of all time, third biggest single of all time.
Oh, wow.
Last Christmas, and that's despite people trying not to hear the song as well.
Yeah,
that's a thing.
That's that Whamageddon.
Whamageddon.
Yeah, I do like
people
to
are trying not to hear it, and yet still it's #1. Afia, what's your favourite Christmas song? Because you must be a fan. I mean, are you the kind of person that sings them in June, July?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've always got a Christmas song just running through my head. Deck the Halls, for some reason, is always in my head. And literally, my daughter will be like, Mum, it's Mother's Day. So my favourite Christmas song is This Christmas. But I do love the Mary J. Blige version. That is my favourite Christmas song ever.
Oh, I'll need to have a listen of that one.
Oh, it's amazing. But I actually really love Last Christmas. I have such a lovely memory of once my daughter and I were in Glasgow for Christmas. We just got off the train at Glasgow Central. I think it was like the 22nd of December or something. And we got off the train and she just started singing Last Christmas. I don't really know why. She was about 5. she just started singing it as we were walking through the concourse, and then all these people joined in, and so we were having like a last Christmas sing-along led by 5-year-old Naima. It was so cute.
And that's what you started, and that's what Christmas does. It brings us all together, and it's a little bit of magic.
What's getting you talking?
England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, also into Wales. In Cardiff, Glasgow, Belfast, Leeds, and in the Yorkshire Dales. But now we're also on the air across the USA. So put down your hot dogs and your guns and shout hip hip hooray. The Chris Moyle Show, now live across America. National Radio 1.
Still to come here on BBC Radio Scotland with me, Zara Janjua, as XL bully dogs find new homes in Scotland following England's crackdown. Do you welcome them? And the battle over the best Christmas movie as Love Actually gets pelters for being out of touch with modern standards. Now to Edinburgh city centre, always a popular destination for tourists, and which will be expecting the usual rush of trade as people flock to celebrate Hogmanay. But a warning this week from Lindsay Leroy of the Scottish Design Exchange, writing in the Scotsman newspaper, who says that the proliferation of tartan tat and souvenir shops in our capital city is doing a disservice to the clothing, food and drink and arts and crafts being created across Scotland. What do you think, Alison?
I was slightly surprised at this. I mean, I suppose some people would argue that there's too much of it at the moment because of all the empty shops, and you tend to get these, sort of one pop-up shops happening, and they tend to be full of tartan tat and stuff. But I can't really see there being a big market for the kind of things that they would like to put in it instead. Your artisan crafts and all that. I mean, let them try it, see if they can make a living doing it. I doubt that they will.
I mean, Paul, it's what tourists want, isn't it?
Yeah, the market will speak and people want to pick these things up. And while you might turn your nose up at it, they're there for a reason. They're there because they can exist as a business. And you don't have to go that far to find something else. Parallel to Princess Street, if you go onto Rose Street, it's much less like that. And it's much more, I suppose, what some people might think of as an idealised Edinburgh. So both things are there if you want to look. And I'm not sure how you would stop it anyway. Or are you going to tell landlords that they can't lease their shops to people?
Well, that's very true. And what about you, Afia? You're in London. It's the same down there, isn't it, for these tat shops?
Oh, yeah, there's so many. And actually on Oxford Street, where there used to be just lots of proper high street retailers, you've got loads of those tat shops now, and they serve a purpose to fleece tourists of their hard-earned cash. But there is a lot of them around. I think people just have to be careful with what they're buying, but they really are part and parcel of cities, of any city, and part of that tourist experience. I don't know how you're really going to clamp down on them.
Thank you, Alison and Paul.
Join me, Billy Differ, this winter as I present the story of 4 of the most loved musicals around.
I am more Brecht than Broadway. I like the darkness.
From Blood Brothers to Phantom of the Opera.
It's really the essence, the core of the story is about love.
And Sunshine on Leith.
Their songs are quite storytelling in a way.
We'll hear from directors, actors, writers and producers who've brought these musicals all to life for both stage and screen. A Night at the Musicals begins as I shine the spotlight on Hamilton.
It is taking a big part of history and just made it so modern.
Christmas Day from noon on BBC Radio Scotland and Sounds.
Fed up with not having anything to celebrate? Bored with having no reason to party? Getting that sinking feeling when you wake up in the morning and there's no presents waiting for you? Here at Special Occasions, we think we have the answer. All new birthdays. Birthdays are a great excuse to celebrate, get drunk, and receive gifts and cards from people. They can be conveniently taken on the date of your birth every year. Plus, you'll automatically get 1 year older. And because birthdays always happen on the same day every year, you can wave goodbye to forgotten celebration worries. Get a birthday for someone you love and put a smile on Mama's face. From the makers of anniversaries, appointments, and bank holidays. Birthdays restricted to one per year unless you're the...
December in England and Wales, it will be against the law to sell, abandon, breed or give away an American XL bully dog, or to have one in public without a lead and muzzle. Owners who want to keep their dogs must apply to an exemption scheme or have their dog euthanised. The Scottish Government has not introduced a ban, creating concerns about a potential loophole for dangerous dogs. And this week, reports that people in Scotland are taking in XL bully dogs from owners south of the border and rehoming them here has obviously arisen. Now, one such example is Buddy, a 5-month-old XL bully who's just arrived in Scotland after his previous owner in Liverpool decided to give him up ahead of the restrictions being introduced. His move north was coordinated by Kellyanne Shaw from Al Bully Charity Rescue in Glasgow.
Any breed of dog can become dangerous if you don't do the necessary work and training with them, socialisation. It's not a breed-specific issue. What I will say also is every dog that we are bringing up here has been fully assessed, and if we are placing them directly into homes, then those homes have been fully vetted also to make sure that they are experienced and capable people to be taking on these dogs.
Now, Doug Smith from Bullywatch UK said the Scottish Government has consulted on dangerous dogs for over 3 years and has not lifted a finger. We're baffled that they have not decided to act. The Scottish Government said any change to the rules must be evidence-based, and we're moving swiftly to carefully consider the evidence so that we can make the right decision for Scotland and public safety, which is paramount to our deliberations. So, Afia, how do you feel then about Scotland, to take Daily Mail's headline, becoming the XL bully capital of Britain?
Well, we don't take anything the Daily Mail says too seriously, first of all. However, I think there needs to be kind of some legislation across the board here. We know we have devolved government and all the rest of it, but if XL bully dogs are deemed to be dangerous, they're dangerous wherever they are in the country, whether that's in Glasgow or whether that's in Manchester or London. I think we just have to be careful that we don't find the system is flooded with these dogs. But it's not just about dogs, it's about owners as well. It's about how they treat the dogs, about how they look after them, making sure that they're not bred or sort of hit up to be these fighting machines. So I think we have to bring that into consideration as well.
Paul, do you think the government are taking the right approach on this issue?
I think that by being cautious, they are taking the right approach rather than knee-jerk. And I think it frequently is the owner rather than the dog. And it's frequently how the dog has been trained in the environment around it. I can see that people are cautious. I have a dog, a Springer Spaniel. I would be nervous if he was running in the park and there was a Bully XL, but I wouldn't necessarily then think that dog should be taken away and put down. I think that keeping if they're on a lead and potentially muzzled until they're home, that may be a way around it, although that seems a little cruel on the dog, frankly. But I think that it's an issue with owner rather than animal.
Paul, Alison, Paul's saying that it's mostly the owners. Would you cross the road if you saw an XL bully when you're out for a walk, or would you have to look at the owner first to determine whether you would cross the road?
No, I know what you mean, because I had that yesterday. I was on a beach with my dog, and there was another dog ran towards it. It was of this breed, and I did think, oh my goodness, and so I think people are more aware of them, and that can't be a bad thing. And especially people being aware of dogs around children. They don't always mix, and if you can get that message across.
That's a very fair point, Alison. Thank you very much.
I feel it in my fingers. Mama in the kitchen cooking, and the children upstairs asleep. It's time for old Santa Claus to make his midnight creep call. Santa Claus wants some loving. Hey, now.
Aha, of course, it is the festive favourite Love Actually. But it's come under fire in recent years, with even the creator Richard Curtis saying there's some elements he wouldn't include if he was making it again. In the New Yorker magazine this week, Anna Pook said obsessive stalking and harassment, whether on your doorstep or in the airport departure lounge, is no longer considered a bold romantic gesture. Though really, was it ever? I guess that question has to come straight to you, Afia. Was it ever? Let's start with the big question. Is Love Actually, should it be cancelled? I feel like that's the fear for most.
Of course not. I hate when people get all like hit up about things that were made ages ago. And also it's a film, like no one's actually going to turn up at your door with boards and confess their love for you and then you run out in the cold without a jacket on in the middle of Notting Hill and kiss him. Just not going to happen. It's just a Christmas film. It's amazing. Watch it or don't watch it.
And very quickly, Paul.
I agree with Sophia. Watch it or don't watch it. Take it for what it is.
Don't watch it, take it for what
watch it or don't watch it. Take it for what it is. It's up to you. Nobody's going to come around your house and make you watch Love Actually.
Nobody is going to come around and make you watch it. But, I think a lot of people do love watching Christmas movies at this time of year, don't they? And certainly I'll still be looking forward to watching Love Actually at some point over this holiday season. Well, my thanks, of course, to Afia Hagen, Alison Rowett and Paul McNamee, and a very, very Merry Christmas to all of you. Rona Dougal is with you from 10 o'clock next Saturday here on BBC Radio Scotland. Now, however, it's time for comedy with Des Clark in Breaking the News.